This is Jennifer Martinez. In this video, I'm going to solve the following compound inequality and then write the answer in interval notation. I rewrote the problem down below. Solve 1/2 is less or equal to negative 2x less than 6. What does this mean? Well, this compound inequality means that 1/2 is less or equal to negative 2x and negative 2x is less than 6. Any compound inequality can be split into two different systems of inequalities with an and in the middle. To solve each one of these, you would divide by negative 2 or multiply by negative 1/2, either way. I think it's easier to multiply by negative 1/2, so let's go ahead and do that. You would end up with x is greater than, we learned in the last section that if you divide or multiply both sides by a negative number, you need to reverse the direction of the inequality. So you get x is greater or equal to negative 3. Of course, you could divide it by negative 2. That would have done the same thing. But when you have a fraction on the left, it's easier to multiply by negative 1/2. And dividing by a negative 2 is the same as multiplying by negative 1/2 anyway. And notice when you multiply by negative 1/2, you end up getting an x. So that is a great way of doing it. X, this would be a negative 1/4. And again, we're multiplying by a negative number, so we need to reverse that direction. And we're going to have an and here. That would be the answer. Now, sometimes students do it all in one shot. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go back to my original. And instead of doing this as two separate inequalities, we could have just done this all at once. So to get x alone, you divide by negative 2 or multiply by negative 1/2. And if you do the inside by negative 1/2, if you do the right and the left, all three sides, you multiply by negative 1/2. And what do you get? The left side, you get a negative 4. The direction of the inequality needs to be switched because we're multiplying by a negative number. The middle, you would get an x. Again, this needs to be reversed, and you would get, oh, sorry, I blew it, negative 1/4. Right? Negative 1, the numerators and the denominators. Sorry about that. X, and this would be a negative 3. And believe it or not, that is the same thing. Written as a compound inequality, although, usually they will put the smaller number on the left, and the negative 1/4 is a larger number. So, and we put the x in the middle. Since x was bigger than negative 3, that means that negative 3 is smaller than x. And the same thing here. It's not really switching it, it's just, right? If 2 is less than 3, that means 3 is bigger than 2. So if negative 1/4 is bigger or equal to x, that means x is smaller or equal to negative 4. And that would be the answer. Not in interval notation, but it would be the answer. Let's see if these mean the same thing. What does the right mean? Well, if I just make a number line, negative 1/4 would be about right there. And we know that if we have, I'll do it in a different color, x is bigger than negative 3, that means everything that's to the right of negative 3. And because it's bigger and negative 3 is not included, the notation they use is a parentheses. If it's a plain less than or a plain greater than, we know it's a parentheses. If it's less or equal to or greater or equal to, we know it's a bracket, which is the negative 1/4. So let's do that in a different color. Let's see, what color should we choose? Let's do it in blue. So this means, by the way, if this means x is smaller or equal to negative 1/4. Again, the same reason is over here. If negative 1/4 is bigger or equal to x, that means x is smaller or equal. So that means everything to the left, and it is a bracket. With the and, it means the intersection of the two quantities, the blue and the lavender color. And so we could see that it's in between, which, by the way, is what a compound inequality means. So what this one means, again, we have the -3, the -1/4. I know I didn't label that proportionally, but again, the -3 is a parentheses, the -4 is a bracket, and the shading is in between. Let me do that in a different color. A bracket, and the shading is in between. In red would be the answer. If we go back to our original question, it said solve, and we did. But it also has to write in interval notation. And by the way, it says simplify your answer. Use integers or fractions, so make sure you don't put this in decimals. For any numbers in the expression, type your answer in interval notation. Okay. By the way, if there was no intersection here, that's when it would be no solution. So I know it's not B, so we have to go to A. And how do we write that interval notation? Well, the answer would be, you start with left to right, so it's a parentheses, -3, comma means 2, -1/4, and a bracket. Again, parentheses stands for the open, right? It means it's not included. The -3 is not included. And the brackets stands for the less than or equal to, or the greater or equal to, where it is included, that equal. So that would be your final answer. Let me give you a short review of just interval notation. Say you just had this right side. Just do a new example. Let me do it in a different color. Okay, say you had right, just x is greater than or equal to -3, which, by the way, we know looks like this in interval notation. Interval notation, what you would write is, oh, by the way, you know that's a bracket. Should put that there. Okay. Means it's included. So what you write is you start with -3 with a bracket saying that's included to infinity. And that's all that would be. Say you had this example. X is less than 2. Just so there's 0, 1, 2. Again, x is less than 2. That would be a parentheses, and all the things that are less than 2 would be that way. So you would start at -infinity. So you put -infinity first, 2, 2. Since you're not including 2, since it's just plain less than 2, like 1.9 but not 2, you signify with that a parentheses. If it was less than or equal to, that's when you do a bracket. By the way, infinity is always a parentheses because you never touch infinity. This one, the one that we had, was between 2. So that's why we started with -3 on the left. We went to -1/4. This one was a parentheses since it was a plain less than, and the right side was a bracket since it was a less than or equal to.